Hello, and welcome to Read Along with Heather. Today, we will be reading Chung Loves Lobsters by Hugh MacDonald and illustrated by Johnny Wales. You know, I actually met the author before. Bizzer was staring into the lobster's tank in his mother's restaurant. His freckled nose was pressed flat against the glass. "What are you doing, Bizzer?" asked his mother, who was wiping off a table. Wally was watching Mr. Chung moving slowly towards the front door for his monthly visit. He was all bent over and carrying the little cooler he always brought along. "I'm looking for X's and O's," Bizzer said, his voice muffled from being close to the steamed-up glass. "You're looking for what?" Wally asked. "X's and O's," he repeated, sounding impatient. Bizzer was 5 and got his name from the way he pronounced zipper. "You're so dumb, Bizzer. How do you expect to find X's and O's in with the lobsters?" "You're the dummy, Wally. I'm looking for them on the lobsters, but I can't see them because they're on the inside." Wally was 10. "Why are X's and O's on the inside?" "Because that's where the skeleton is." "I don't know what you mean," Wally said. Mr. Lee was almost at the door. Their mother had told them all about him. He used to cook in the restaurant when she first took it over. Ever since he retired, he came back once a month, regular as clockwork, on the day he cashed in his old age pension. He hadn't much money. He earned so little in the restaurant that he hadn't been able to save much. Mummy told me the lobsters were exoskeletons. Their mother was smiling as Mr. Lee came in the front door. "Exoskeletons, dear. Their skeletons are on the outside. I'll explain later. Hello, Mr. Lee. Hello, Mrs. Moore. How are you today?" "I hope fine. I hope the new cooks know how to cook lobster." "Yes, Mr. Lee. I taught them just the way you showed me. Hold their heads in the boiling water so they die quickly. That's right. It is not good to have them suffer." "Will you have your usual?" she asked him. "Yes, a good healthy female. No missing claws or legs. I can't afford to waste my money. Money is not too plentiful." "It certainly isn't, Mr. Lee. Maybe next time you'll buy yourself a cooked lobster. I'll sell it to you for the same price since you used to work here." "No, thank you very much. I want live lobster." "I guess you don't think we can cook as much as well as you do?" "No, I'm sure you can cook real good. Thank you very much." With that, Mr. Lee moved to the counter and opened up his little cooler. Mrs. Moore brought him a lobster. He looked carefully at it to be sure it was healthy. "Mr. Lee loves lobsters," she said, smiling at the old man. He smiled back, put his lobster gently in the cooler, put on the cover, and started slowly over to the cash register. She took his pension check and returned his cage. After counting it carefully, he placed it in his wallet, picked up the cooler, and went out the door. "Bizzer," said their mother in a voice that started low and got louder towards the end. "You boys be back here in time for supper." "Yes, Mom," Wally said. "Come on, Bizzer, we gotta go." He dashed out to the door with his little brother close behind. "Where are we going, Wally?" asked Bizzer. "Let's see where Mr. Lee lives," suggested Wally. "Where does he live?" "Mom said he lives right in Charlottetown, not far from here. See, he's just up ahead." He just turned the corner off Queen onto Water Street. "Slow down, Bizzer," he exclaimed softly so Mr. Lee wouldn't know they were following him. The old man, whose tired back was bent like a bow, had stopped. There was a busy part of town in the summer. Old Charlottetown is full of tourists. "Don't run around so much, Bizzer." Up ahead, Mr. Lee had stopped in front of a small blue house whose door was right on the sidewalk. He started digging in his pockets, moving the small cooler from hand to hand as he looked for a key. He fumbled with the lock for a few minutes before the door opened and he went in. So that's where he lives, said Wally, disappointed that the game was over so early. Let's go down to the yacht club and look at the boats, and maybe we could skip stones. Yeah, we could skip stones, repeated Bizzer. They were down there for about 20 minutes when Wally looked back up toward Water Street. Mr. Lee had come out of his house and was headed their way. Come on back here, Biz, said Wally, dragging his little brother behind a big blue drum that once had held cleaning fluid. Mr. Lee was slowly coming down the hill. Mr. Lee is going faster, whispered Bizzer. It's 'cause of gravity, Biz. That's why he's going faster. What's gravity? Mr. Lee was going past them now. He was headed for some rocks that were down along the front of the harbor. Beyond the rocks, there was some grubby sand. The people in the apartment above sometimes took beach chairs down on warm mornings. He's gonna have a picnic, whispered Biz excitedly. Shh, said Wally. Biz was right. Mr. Lee was carrying a picnic basket. On top of it was what looked like a gingham tablecloth. He's probably gonna eat his lobster. He went home to cook it, and now he's gonna have a picnic dinner. Mom says that Mr. Chung Lee loves lobster. She told me he came to the island from China, and he cooked lobsters for 35 years. How long is that? Asked the Biz. He stretched his hands about 25 centimeters apart. About that far? 35 is real long, Wally said. I won't be 35 for 25 years. Shh! Mr. Lee was moving down closer to the rocks. Let's go down and watch Mr. Lee eat his lobster. He only gets a lobster once a month. He hasn't got much money. He only has the old age pension. What's that? Asked Biz. An old age pension is money for being old. When you can't work anymore, they give you money so you can get what you need. What you need? Food and clothes and stuff. Visitors started to laugh. Why don't they get what they need from their mummies and daddies? They're too old to have mummies and daddies. You mean old people don't get mummies and daddies? They have mothers and fathers, but one day they got real old and they died. Oh, Bizzer said. What's Mr. Lee doing? He had his eyes closed and his hands over them. Why have you got your eyes covered, Biz? I wanted to see in the dark. Oh, Wally said. Open your eyes. He's spreading out his tablecloth on the rocks. He's taking out his thermos in a bowl. Where's the lobster? Bizzer asked. I don't know. Come on, Bizzer. Follow me. They moved down between some big wooden cradles in the yachts are stored in winter. What's he got? Whispered Biz. Mr. Lee had taken out some chopsticks, and holding a small bowl up to his face, he began scooping rice into his mouth. When finished, he poured something from his thermos into a tiny cup and drank from it. All the time he was doing this, he looked over the water. He was being very calm. Is he going to eat his lobster now? Said Bizzer as Mr. Lee went to the water and rinsed his bowl and chopsticks. He returned to his picnic basket and placed them inside. Then he slowly walked over the rocks and sat. He stepped into the water as if to judge how warm it was, then returned to the rocks and sat down again, picking up the cooler and removing the cover. He saved it for the last, didn't he, Wally? Yes, his brother answered him. For the last. I always like to save the best for the last. Mom doesn't like it when I do that. She says it isn't polite. But I guess when you're old and only have one lobster a month, you don't have to worry about your manners. Bizzer started laughing. Mr. Lee is crazy. He forgot to cook his lobster. It's still green. Mr. Lee's gonna eat his lobster raw. Wally looked out towards the rocks. It was true. The lobster was still alive. He could see its claws waving crazily close to Mr. Lee's fingers. He almost shouted for him to be careful. Mr. Lee was stroking the lobster and talking to it. They couldn't hear what he was saying, but his voice sounded sad. "What's he doing?" asked Bizzer. "I don't know," Wally answered. All at once, Mr. Lee got up and waded into the water. He went out to meet her. He bent down and gently placed the lobster in the water of the harbor. He joined his hands in front of his chest and inclined his head towards the harbor mouth. He spoke a few words in Chinese, stood still for a moment, then came back out of the water and poured some more tea. "Miss Lobsters is going to get away," shouted Bizzer in his fullest voice. He broke from the cover of his hiding place and dashed down to the beach in front of the old man. Mr. Lee gave no sign of noticing the Biz on the sand in front of him. "He's gone, Mr. Lee. Your lobster got away. You shouldn't have let him into the water. He's lost out there now." Bizzer started to cry loudly. Mr. Lee got up slowly and walked over to where the Biz stood roaring. The crying stopped. "Why are you unhappy, little boy?" asked Mr. Lee gently, bending down even closer. "Because you lost your lobster. You only get one lobster every month and it's gone." "Yes, my lobster is gone and I am happy." "Why are you happy, Mr. Lee? You wasted your money. You bought a lobster and now it's gone." "I will explain. Please sit down." He gestured towards his tablecloth, which was still spread over the rocks. The boys came and sat on either side of him. "I want you to know that I've told this to no one, because I don't think people would understand." "Please tell us," said Wally. "Yes, tell," echoed Bizzer. "I like secrets. Ever since I came here, I've been happy. My family are grown and are living in Toronto. They are very busy. I see them not often. My wife is now with her ancestors, and I will go soon. All the time my family was growing, I worked in the restaurant cooking lobsters. I had to put lobsters into very hot water and give them pain. When I stopped work, I wanted to do something to restore some of the good I had taken away. So every month I buy one lobster and give its life to please the spirits of the ancestors that I hurt." "Oh," said Bizzer. "Do you understand?" asked Mr. Lee. "I think so," Wally answered. "I think we'll go. Come on, it's getting late, Bizzer." "We'll go now," repeated Bizzer. "I thought you loved lobsters, Mr. Lee." "I do, little boy," said Mr. Lee. "Perhaps you'll understand later." The boys headed back. When they got to the restaurant, the mother was having a cup of coffee at one of the tables, reading a newspaper. "Where did you boys go today?" she asked, looking up from her paper. "We watched Mr. Lee eat his dinner," said Bizzer. "I see," she said. "Did he enjoy his lobster?" "Yes," they said together. "Mr. Chung Lee loves lobsters." And that's the end of Chung Lee Loves Lobsters.